Okay, so we're diving into Smile 2. Everyone's talking about it, right?
You really have people talking.
But, like, what makes this sequel so fascinating? I mean, even the first Smile,
Yeah, it really got under your skin.
it did. Like, that feeling when a smile goes from genuine to, well, creepy.
It's primal, right? It just unsettles you on a gut level.
Totally. And the whole premise, this entity, it like feeds on trauma.
Oh, absolutely.
Passing from person to person, each victim. Oh man, those grins.
Haunting.
Totally haunted. And remember, at the heart of it was this therapist.
It's trying to break the cycle.
Exactly. Trying to outsmart this curse before it consumed her.
I think what's interesting is the director said something recently about how they've only just scratched the surface. Like they've only taken a single glass of water from an ocean of smile ideas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it sounds like typical sequel talk. But when you think about what's happening in horror right now.
You're thinking franchises.
Yeah. Look at The Conjuring. It's not just one film anymore. It's a whole universe, right?
Totally.
And audiences love it. It proved that horror can be more than just a one-off scare. It can be this sprawling, interconnected experience.
So the question is, can Smile do that? Can it become like the next Conjuring?
Right, and that's the big question. Can they capture that same magic, that same kind of expanded universe?
Well, Smile 2 is definitely taking us in a new direction. From the intel you've gathered, it looks like we're moving away from the therapist's world and into the life of a pop star.
Yeah.
Skye Riley.
Yeah, Skye Riley. And I think that's fascinating. We're going from this grounded, relatable character to someone in the intense pressure cooker of fame.
That's a good point.
And the synopsis actually mentions Skye's dark past, which makes me think her personal demons are going to be a big part of this.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, trauma is what fuels this whole thing.
It's the entity's lifeblood.
Exactly. But think about the kind of trauma someone in the public eye faces. It's constant scrutiny, the pressure to be on all the time.
And to maintain this perfect image.
Yeah, like even when everything's falling apart behind the scenes, it's a lot.
It really is. It's almost like the perfect breeding ground for an entity like this.
It's true.
Because you're already dealing with these intense, often hidden pressures.
And then you add this like supernatural stalker into the mix. Oh, man.
It's a whole new level of horror. It's going to be really interesting to see how they play with that.
Oh, totally. And speaking of playing with our minds, did you see that clip they released? The one with Skye Riley in her dressing room?
Oh, yeah. The one where it starts out normal and then just goes off the rails?
Yes. It's like she's getting ready for a performance and then boom, pure nightmare fuel.
I know. And it's so effective because, like, just like the first Smile, they use those hallucinations to mess with you. You're never quite sure what's real and what's in her head.
Which honestly is what makes psychological horror so good, right? It's like that fear of losing your grip on reality.
100%. That sense of unease, of not being able to trust your own senses. It's terrifying.
Okay, but so far from what we've seen, it feels like Smile 2 is sticking pretty close to what worked in the first one, you know? The jump scares, the creepy grins. Do you think that's a good thing? Or should they be taking more risks, trying to do something totally different?
Well, I mean, there's that balance, isn't there? You want to give audiences what they loved about the original, those elements that make it a Smile movie. But you also don't want to just rehash the same thing, you know?
Right, because then it's just predictable. And predictable horror is boring horror.
Exactly. And horror is at its best when it surprises you, when it takes you somewhere new and unexpected.
So how do you find that sweet spot? How do you give the audience the familiar scares while still pushing the boundaries?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
One way is to take those familiar elements, like the entity itself, and put it in a completely new context. So in the first Smile, it's this shadowy force that preys on isolated individuals. But now, imagine it unleashed in the world of a global pop star.
Oh, wow.
Right? Think about it. Skye Riley lives in this world of constant exposure. Social media, paparazzi, every little thing she does is scrutinized, shared, analyzed.
Like living under a microscope.
Exactly. And remember, this entity, it wants to spread. It wants to perpetuate this cycle of fear and trauma. And what better way to do that than to hijack the very channels we use to connect and share? Suddenly, that terrifying grin isn't something you see in a dark hallway or a fleeting glimpse. It's everywhere. It's on billboards. It's in your social media feeds. It's on the news. You can't escape it.
Dude, you're blowing my mind right now.
It's like it takes that fear of the unknown and makes it inescapable.
It's true. Okay, and speaking of Inescapable, we have to talk about the marketing for this movie
Right.
because it is everywhere. I mean, the first smile, that whole viral campaign with those creepy smiling people they
Oh,
planted,
yeah, that was genius.
it was so smart. This time, though, it seems like they're doing something a little different. Like they're blending those guerrilla tactics with more traditional marketing.
Yeah, it's like they're promoting Skye Riley as if she's a real pop star. She's got singles out, music videos. There are billboards everywhere with her face on them. But it's all designed to creep you out, of course.
Right, and I wonder if it'll be as effective. Because part of what made those smile sightings so creepy was that they felt so real, like they could happen anywhere to anyone. This time it feels a little more, I don't know, manufactured, I guess.
I see what you mean. It's interesting. The first film, it went viral because it tapped into this primal fear, this sense of, what if that was me?
Yeah.
This time around, it's more calculated, more controlled.
Right. And I'm not saying it won't work.
It might be even more effective.
It could be, but it is a different approach. It's like the movie itself, right? They're
Yeah.
trying to recapture that magic, that sense of dread, but they're also trying to do something new with it.
Yeah, and that's the question, isn't it? Can Smile 2 be as big as the first one?
Right. It's like, how do you bottle that lightning?
Especially with something like horror. I mean, half the fun is that jump scare, you know? But if you're expecting it,
You're ready for it. It loses its punch.
exactly. So can Smile 2 still scare us, even if we know what's coming? Well, that's the challenge, right? They have to find new ways to get it under our skin. And I think that's where tapping into this idea of virality is so smart. Because it's not just about the smile entity itself anymore. It's about how that entity would function in our world, a world obsessed with images, with sharing everything online.
Oh, man. It's like that smile entity, it's practically built for the internet.
Exactly. Think about it. Skye Riley, she's this pop star. Her life is all over social media.
Yeah.
What happens when that terrifying grin starts popping up everywhere online? On billboards, in memes.
Okay, now that's just freaky. It's like it takes that primal fear of the smile entity and amplifies it.
Right, because now it's not just something you might see in a dark alley or a fleeting moment. It's everywhere you look. It's in your home, on your phone, following you everywhere you go online. You can't escape it, and that's terrifying.
No, totally. And it makes you think, doesn't it? About how much of our lives are lived online now. And what happens when something dark and sinister starts to infiltrate that space.
Exactly. It's like, what happens when the things that scare us the most start to feel unavoidable? When they're not just in the shadows, but right in front of our faces all the time.
Okay, now I'm thinking about this way too much. I'm going to have nightmares tonight.
Me too, probably. But that's kind of the magic of it all, right? A good horror movie, it stays with you. It makes you think about things in a new way. And from what we've seen so far, Smile 2 might just do that.
Yeah, I think so too. It's taking a familiar concept and twisting it, reflecting it back at us through the lens of our own digital lives, which is both fascinating and terrifying.
Absolutely. It's definitely one to watch.
It is. It really is. Well, there you have it, folks. Another deep dive, another descent into the world of horror.
And what a wild ride it was.
Totally. So, what do you think? Are you excited for Smile 2? Are you terrified? Let us know. Hit us up on social media, share your theories, and tell us what you think about this whole viral horror thing. Until next time.
Sweet dreams.
Okay, now that's just mean.